Hey, listeners, before we get to today's podcast, I just want to thank our sponsors who make this podcast possible. First off, we have Tiny & Sons Glass. Does your vehicle have cameras or driver's assist? If so, when your windshield is replaced, it will need to be recalibrated. What is recalibration? When your vehicle's windshield is replaced, the safety systems need to then be tested to ensure that they work with your new windshield. Some vehicles require static recalibration, and others require a dynamic recalibration. Not sure who to trust to take care of this recalibration for you? Well, just call Tiny & Sons Glass in Pembroke, Mass. They are experts in auto glass and registered company of the Auto Glass Safety Council. Plus, they make it easy. They will call your insurance company for you. Get your windshield replaced by their highly trained auto glass technicians and get your vehicle recalibrated so you can be back on the road. Tiny & Sons Glass, keeping you and your family safe. And our second sponsor today is Baxter Blue. Do you experience digital eye strain from too much blue light exposure from digital screens? Baxter Blue glasses are not your average frames. These blue light lenses filter 80% of the highest energy blue light, eliminating 99% of the glare. The past year, we have all been glued to our devices more than ever. And here at Inebri-art, we're making more content. We have some video content. We're doing a lot of audio stuff, live streaming, which all means I'm sitting in front of the computer. Pretty much any time I'm awake, I am in front of the computer, eyes glued to the screen. Our exposure to digital light has soared, and our eyes and our sleep are suffering as a result. Baxter Blue is also a force for good and provides a pair of reading glasses for someone in need for every pair sold. This is eyewear built for our digital age, and Baxter Blue is giving our listeners 10% off the next purchase of blue light, sleep, or kids glasses. Click on the link in our show notes for an exclusive discount. This is the sign you have been waiting for to invest in blue light glasses. We know you'll love your Baxters, and we know that you will feel the difference. So thanks again for our sponsors for sponsoring the show, and now let's jump right into the podcast. Welcome back, Inebri-ites. This is Andy, the Inebri-art podcast, and today's guest told me they had heard about our show, so I guess I'm going to need a bigger office to start fitting my ego in here, because that's like 2 in a row, which I'm sure my friends will love, the fact that I'm getting more of an ego. But we had a stretch last summer where it seemed like we were doing all musicians, and we try to mix it up, so we stepped away from musicians for a while, but now they're back, and Evan Stanley, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey, no problem. Anytime someone wants to like boost my ego and be like, "Hey, I've heard of you," I'm down for that. So I find the thing now is there's so many venues for music and so many types of So back in my day, and I hate saying shit like that, but you'd walk into the record store and there was like country, rap, rock, and classical. Like there's 4 categories.
Totally.
And like nowadays, like no one fits in any category. So the question I like to ask artists, so our listeners who may not be familiar with your work, is who would you tour with that would make sense, that people might have heard of, so they can be like, oh, okay, I know like what kind of groove they're in.
Yeah, I mean that's a crazy question, because it's funny. I grew up like in a musical family, and I always talk to my parents about it, and it seems like when they were growing up, everything was a lot more kind of segmented, where like you listen to rock, you listen to pop, or you listen to Motown, you listen to whatever it was, but that was it. If you stepped out of that box, it was like,
absolutely,
fuck, man. But then like, my dad would always tell me about these crazy bills, because he grew up in New York, and he'd see these shows at the Fillmore where it was like you'd have the craziest act, all 3 on a bill in a night, where it's like, one, I'm jealous, but I want to get back to that. And that's like, I love festivals for that reason. I think it's why tour with someone that you sound super close to. And I think now is kind of the time where everyone's accepting of that. Like, I think music is so exciting now because genres are totally meaningless with kind of stream culture. It's really just whatever you fuck with. Like people like what they like, and you don't have to stick to one thing. So I think as an artist, it's super freeing. I mean, you know, I think I'm very lucky in that I don't sound like anybody out there, and that is something that when I first kind of got into writing and singing and playing, it was like, well, shit, like I don't sound like all of this. What am I going to
Yeah.
do? And now it's the biggest blessing because anyone who hears my stuff has a different reference for it. And that's, as soon as someone says like, "Oh, you're the next blank," yeah, it's over. So I'm so happy that no one seems to have the same idea about what it is that I do, and I love that. And I think that's because my background's super diverse. I mean, I grew up listening to like 60s psychedelic pop, 70s kind of singer-songwriter Laurel Canyon, and 80s new wave kind of you know punk type stuff. And then that's like filtered through a 90s baby growing up on Green Day and Blink 182, and then catching whiffs of like Motown from my parents. So it's kind of all over the place. And I think that's how you make something interesting, is like it's you learn by copying, and then by bringing your own kind of weirdness, whether it's sounds or arrangements or vantage points to what you're copying. That's how you get something new and kind of fresh.
Yeah, I like a lot of what you're saying. It's like I remember when I was a kid, like Aerosmith did the crossover with Run DMC, and Anthrax did one with Public
Oh,
Enemy,
so sick.
and then uh, Perry Farrell put together like the first Lollapalooza, and the bill on that was
Hmm.
insane. Like those were the best shows because everybody was there, and
Oh, totally. I mean, I
sorry,
went
go
to
ahead.
outside. No, no. I think with this Zoom lag. Anyone who's listening, I'm not an asshole. I don't mean to cut people off. You just you got a couple second lag. Like I remember going to Coachella for the first time when I was like 13, 14, maybe
Yeah.
13. And it was like that was the first time I'd been to a festival. Like I'd been to at that point probably thousands of shows, but like
Mhm.
a festival was like, oh my God, this is nonstop. This is every day for 3 days. And it's like anything, I feel like. Like I saw Hot Chip and then I saw Jack Johnson. It's like
Yeah.
it's so sick. And then I saw Prince. Like that's wild.
Oh man, you saw Prince? I never got to see
I
Prince.
was, God, the thing that's so I'm really lucky. I've gotten to see a lot of kind of heroes of mine. The only problem is some of them I saw when I was either too young or hadn't connected with them yet. So like for me at that point, I was 13. It was like, oh cool, Prince. Like my parents like him. Like I
Yeah.
didn't even know. I couldn't have named you if you had a gun to my head. I couldn't name one Prince song then. And now it's like, geez, man, I'd kill to go back to that show now. Like I didn't actually get into Prince till after he died. It was one of those things where, like everybody's heard Prince. You can't exist
Sure.
and not hear Prince. But like, I never, I mean, I vibed with it, but I just never kind of went down that rabbit hole for whatever reason. It wasn't the right time or place. And then I was living in New York, and he passed away. And it was one of those things where I'm like, all right, I need to listen to Prince. Like, I should like Prince. I feel like everything about Prince I like. He's a cool motherfucker. Like I like what I've heard. Like I need to listen to Prince, and I just kind of binged his stuff, and it was like, oh my God, like it was. I didn't realize the scope of it. Like, whoa,
There,
and it
there's so
was.
many musicians like that where even like, I mean, I was at the perfect age when Nirvana broke. I was like, I think junior year in high school. So like
Oh man.
that was like my band.
Hmm.
And like even going back and because my daughter's gotten into Nirvana and I'll put on like Nevermind or Bleach or an album and you're just like, oh my God, like
Oh yeah.
every song is amazing. Like I forgot all about this song or I forgot all about that song. It's just sometimes you need to
I mean,
deep dive that musician.
totally. That's. I mean, that's the best. That's the best feeling. Is especially now. I mean, every single day I'm working at least 12 hours on my stuff or writing or producing for other people, and it's just a scramble, and so much of that too is consuming. I mean, you can't, especially in these times. It's like we can't live, so it's like you kind of get inspiration from what you're listening to. So I listen to everything, and I listen to everything that's coming out and everything that's doing well and everything that's not. And just I try and consume as much music as I can, but there are only so many hours in the day, so it's like I'm not really, listening to what kind of sparked that love initially, at least not the same amount home from school. And I'd listen to music or play guitar from 3 o'clock until, whenever I fell asleep. I'm listening to, just 12 hours of stuff a day, getting inspired. And, the other day I put everything down and I just took it down. Like, I'm just going to listen to shit that I love. And like the stuff that, because there's so much stuff I listen to now every day that I love, but I'm talking like the stuff that got me into music when I was like
Yeah.
a kid. And I went back, and it's funny you mentioned Nirvana, because they're actually kind of the reason I started playing guitar, and I didn't even like them back then. But
Okay.
my best friend Justin, I went over to his house. Yeah, so like I'd always seen my dad play, and like that was cool, but it was, that was dad's work. It didn't quite
Right.
connect. It was like whatever. And I went over to my buddy's place, and I was like 10 or 11, and he had just gotten this like red sunburst Ibanez acoustic guitar that I thought was so cool looking. He's like, look at this, check this out. And he played Smells Like Teen Spirit. And like, I didn't care about Nirvana at all. It wasn't like I didn't like them. I just like didn't care about Nirvana in the slightest back then, but I
Yeah.
knew the song. And the fact that he could play a song that I knew and had heard was just like, oh my God, you're magic. Like, how do you do that? It was like, what is happening? So I went home that night. I'm like, Dad, you have to teach me guitar. And, I'd said that like a couple times to him, because like you're a kid, you want to play guitar, and then you want to play soccer, and then you want to play GameCube, and then like you bounce
Right.
around every other hour. So he's like, all right. And like, he showed me a couple chords, but like I got him. Like that was different. That was, I really got him. And the next morning I was like, look, and I played him. I was like, show me more. And this was like, like 6 a.m. I'm waking him up before school. And he's like, okay, like you guys, like if you really want to learn, like I'll get you an acoustic guitar. And he got me this like Chinese little Samick guitar. He's like, you need to learn to play on a hard guitar before you move to an easy guitar. So like I just sat there. I sat there every day after school, and I just played nonstop. But Nirvana is the thing that started that.
What
Like
What do you think was different about that time? Was it just you were at the right maturity level, or just like what was
I
that clicking
think
moment in your brain?
I think it was probably because that's that was right around the age where I started to kind of discover music that was separate from my parents. So I'd always
Yeah.
loved music. Like I really loved music, and it always, it did connect with me and move me. And when I must have been 5 or 6 when the Beatles One came out, like
Hmm.
all their number one hits. Which also, side note, what the fuck? Like a band can have like a 40-track album and every song was a number one hit. Like that's ridiculous. Like
No, not
looking
a
back
band.
on
The
that,
Beatles can do that, not a band.
exactly. It's like,
Yeah.
but like, how is that? That's like unfathomable. It's like, yeah, it's not a greatest hits. It's only number one hits, and even that has to be a double album because they had too many. Like
Right.
that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I remember that connected with me. That was the first. That was the first music that like, not just like, oh, this is cool, but it was like, whoa, like this really. And I mean, I think a lot of people obviously have that experience. That's why they had that many number ones. But like,
Yeah.
it really hit a nerve where it's like, okay, this, like, I get this. This moves me. But that was kind of it around that age. And I kind of played piano a little, but I was really shitty and didn't practice because I couldn't play the stuff I wanted to play. Like I'm learning classical stuff, and it's like, yeah. But when I was about 10 or 11, I think is when I started really getting into music that I love, totally separate from my parents, just like me and my friends. So like that's when like American Idiot came out, the Green Day album,
Yep.
and I latched onto that. I knew every single word of every song and I listened to that cover to cover at least probably, I don't know, 5 or 10 times a day. Like it was unreal. And then I got all their stuff. Like I got Dookie, and I was like, what is this? Like that was the first time I kind of went down a rabbit hole on my own, because I also had the internet.
Yeah.
That was like right when I was starting to get access to the internet, and I could search stuff, and I could search like Green Day, and I could see that he played a Les Paul Jr. I could see that they put this many albums, and I could watch live videos, and like I really had kind of the tools, because I grew up in LA. It's not like in New York or like other places, I guess small towns, like you can kind of wander around after school on your own and stop at Tower Records or whatever record stores there, and like LA, you have to drive everywhere. Everything's spread out. So you're kind of like stuck at your parents' disposal for a lot of that. So it was like school, home, friends' places. So there wasn't
That's
a
what it's like in the
lot of like,
suburbs too. You know, the suburbs, it's like the record stores are like
exactly.
45-minute drive.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like I was walking home from school and could see something in the window, be like, what is that? Like, but then I had the internet and I had an iPod and I could put stuff on. I had my mom's iTunes password to the iTunes store. And
Yeah.
like, I didn't realize, I'm 10. I'm like, oh, this is cool. I'll buy this Simple Plan record. I'll buy this Blink
Yeah.
182 album. And I remember she sat me down and she's like, Evan, you got to stop buying this much music. She's like, I want you to listen to everything you can, but you spent $350 on iTunes in the last month. And I was like, what? It was one of the, because it was the internet at that point. To me, it
Yeah.
was like I definitely had a concept. My parents were really on me young about having a concept of money and like just because you want it, you can't have it. But like this was different. You hit a button and then you had the
And
album. It was
poof,
like
there it
there was
is.
no
Yeah.
yeah. It's like oh cool, like it exists now. So
And you look at it, you're like,
but
oh,
that
it's like $4, and you do like 3 a day every day, but each one you're like, it's
exactly, and
only
it's like
$4. Yeah.
it adds up. But that also, I mean, I was lucky that you know she didn't totally flip on me, and both my parents were really cool about oh you like this, like you might want to check this out, and like my dad would bring home CDs and my mom too, and um, kind of point me in directions. But right around that age is when I started to really be able to find stuff on my own. So like Green Day was actually really the main one, but like Blink 182 I loved, and kind of all that stuff. That was like the age of like pop punk
Hmm.
as mainstream pop,
Yeah.
and like Good Charlotte and all that stuff. And but Green Day, man, American Idiot, when that came out, because that's one of those ones. Even now, I listen back and it's like every song on that is just like it might not be your taste, but it's fucking amazing. Like
Right.
they're just so well crafted, and it's such a coherent statement. Like there's nothing unnecessary, and everything adds up to something greater than the sum of the parts. It's just like the ultimate album. I love that record so much, and it's guitar based. So I think that was a lot of it too. It's like
Yeah.
you know, it was guitar music that I connected with.
So at that point, were you like, I'm gonna learn every song on this like inside and out?
Oh, for sure. And like every solo, and luckily for me, Green Day solos. I think also that's kind of one thing that set me off on the kind of hook and pop focused kind of vantage point. It's like even the guitar solos on that record, they're really melodic. Like I could
Hmm.
sit here now and sing you back every guitar solo on that Green Day album because like they're sick and they sound really cool, but like there's a point to them beyond just showing like look what I can do on guitar, which side note I also love, and it's
Yeah.
sick. Like guitar is the coolest instrument ever. I get it. But I think I was lucky in finding Green Day early because like they had attitude, they had a very very clear ID and a clear feel and look and
Hmm.
sound. But the reason they're as big as they are is because they had hooks. Like they had pop songs, and that's kind of the trend of everything I really 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 love. The stuff that like really really connects with me and always has, whether it's been you know uh, Green Day or the Beatles or the Temptations or the Cars. Like,
Yeah.
you know, they're all, different packaging, different packages of pop. It's like the songs are really the core of it. Everything like comes out of the song. It's not a jam, it's a song.
Hmm.
And that's something that's always really connected. I mean, Zeppelin, like people think of them a lot of times like they're like the ultimate jam band, and they are. They're just like the greatest band ever. But like they have the best hooks ever. Every single song. It's like how do you make a drum part a hook? They managed. It's like
Yeah.
they managed to. It's like the bass line's a hook, the guitar's a hook, the vocals are a hook, the drums are. It's like yes, it's insane and virtuosic and like just ridiculous and amazing, but it's also memorable. Like everything is purposeful, and I think that's something that's so important and something I always try and get across is like I want to make music for me, but I also want to make music for people. I want people to connect with it. It's not just me shredding guitar. I want people to connect with the songs and what I'm saying and go, yeah, like I've experienced that. You put into words and song what I've experienced, and you you've articulated it, you've expressed it in a way that I can feel and I can get with.
You know,
That's what I always want to do. I love jamming and I love shredding guitar because it's rad as fuck. But like,
yeah.
I want people to be able to hear and go, I get that. I feel
You,
that.
that's like a really interesting point and like a super important point because I feel like in all art forms you get people who are like, well, this is my art and you just don't understand. But it's like art is really a two-way conversation with people,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of what form, writing, music, visual arts, whatever, dancing. Like if you're not
Totally.
involving someone else, it's like you're just talking to yourself. It's you can have like this
Exactly.
super elaborate, difficult song to play, but if someone else can't relate to it, what the fuck are you doing?
Totally. And that's the thing I think is so interesting. Like I love a lot of visual arts too. And I just love art in general. I love expression. And what you said is like what I think is so important is at the end of the day, art is to me like the greatest way to communicate. It's
Mhm.
supposed to bring people together and express something that you can't necessarily with just words alone. And I think it's the most amazing and wonderful thing. And it's so cool too. And like, I've been really lucky. I've gotten to travel kind of all over the world and you can connect with people who don't speak a word of your language, but you have a genuine connection. You guys know what you're talking, or you know what you're, having this back and forth about. And that's what's so cool about it. So, I get if you have something you want to express, I definitely totally get it. And I've done it where it's like, this might be kind of hard to distill into something that everybody's going to get. But I think it's your job as an artist to do your best to make it as accessible as humanly possible. That's not saying take away from its core, but don't be difficult to be difficult. Then you're just a dick. Like,
Right. Yeah.
like also like maybe I'm missing something, but what's the point then? Like, I don't want to be some folk hero who like 17 bloggers love who never existed outside of a basement, but they like talk about nonstop. It's like, nah, like I want millions of people to connect to what I do. Like that's the point to me.
Right.
It's like you want to bring people together. You want to build a community and an understanding, not push people away because you don't get it. Like, well, if a lot of people don't get it, then maybe you're doing something kind of
Maybe
whack.
it's you that doesn't get it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, and again, like I'm not trying to knock any of that stuff. Like there are definitely times where you're like, I have to make this for me. Cause like,
Yeah.
again, like I didn't get into playing guitar because I wanted to impress people or do anything other than express myself. Like that's why I got into it.
Hmm.
And there are definitely times where it's like, all right, like this isn't the most commercial thing ever, but I got to do it. I got to do it for me. And it's, you do it and then you feel better and you feel it and you go, yeah, this is me and I need to do it. I need to stick with that. And I think that's amazing too. I just hate when people try to be like artsy or difficult just for the sake of it. Then it's just annoying. Like, and you
Yeah.
can tell the difference. You can like, they're totally. I mean, like, there's this singer, the tallest man on earth. He's like this like little tiny Swedish dude who writes the coolest folk stuff and plays amazing guitar. And his lyrics are wild. Like, so the fact that English is his second language is mind boggling. And he writes these lyrics.
Hmm.
And like, there's definitely times where I'll listen to something. It's like, I have no idea what he's talking about, but I'm 100% sure that he knows exactly what he's talking about. And that,
Yeah.
but that connects. Like, it still connects with me where it's like, he's not being difficult to be difficult. He's trying to express something that's really hard to express. And he gets it. And I feel it. I don't necessarily get it. I can't
Hmm.
explain it to you, but I feel it. I get it in that way. And like, to me, I think that's great. Like, that's awesome. It's just when it's like, when it feels removed, that's when it gets me. When it's just like,
I
you
feel
didn't
like,
feel this, you thought of this.
yeah, I feel like some people will do that kind of thing where it's so hard because, all right, so I'm going to roll it back. I'm sure you saw, because it was all over the internet, where the dude like duct taped the banana to the wall.
Yeah.
And it's like sometimes you do that to do it in a Banksy kind of way where you're like, art's fucked up and I'm going to do this and sell it for crazy money. And I'm going to do that to point out that art is fucked up.
But then the
That's
art is not the banana on the wall. The art is what you expected to follow and did,
right.
like, to
Yeah.
me. Like, and I think that's sick. Like, it's like, okay.
But then you get the kind of pretentious aspect of it where like Banksy had done this one piece and it sold at auction, and the second the hammer went down,
It's shredded,
it's
right?
shredded. And he did it as like a fuck you kind of thing, but the pretentious side of art, because it's noteworthy, it's now worth more than what the person paid for it, just because it's
Hmm.
famous. And it's like, those are those people who are like talking to themselves, the ones that are like, I'm gonna do this to make it worth more, or I'm gonna make it to be obtuse. But like,
Hmm.
if you're doing it to make a statement, or because it means something, because you have to be genuine, like if it
Totally.
genuinely means something to you.
And I think people feel that. Like even if something, that's why something that's, whether you want to call it weird or obtuse or whatever, like when that kind of stuff succeeds on a wider level or a massive level, I think it's because no matter how weird it is, like people can feel generally what's real and what's not. And
Mhm.
I think like if it's real, like, it can work. It just has to be real. Um,
Do you ever get the feeling where there's pressure? Because I mean, at the end of the day, the music business is a business. Do you ever get the pressure to kind of curtail your voice or what you want to say to make it more marketable? Do you ever feel that pressure?
no, but I think also luckily that's because kind of my tastes and vision often align with pop. I mean, I think it all
Mhm.
goes back to like I love pop songs. So, when I always want to write the absolute best song that's possible, and I think in that one of my, you know, like my biggest goal is to connect with people. Like, so I think luckily that kind of goes hand in hand. Um, there are definitely times where you're like, yeah, maybe this sound is like I think it's super cool, but it's not quite retro yet and it's not fresh, so it's just dated. Yeah, let's maybe skip that sound. But like I don't think that's a huge sacrifice. I'm, on the whole, no, I'm lucky where I think, I'm kind of shooting for the most connection possible, and not mainstream in a bad way, mainstream in a good way, in the sense that a lot of people connect, but the packaging, my voice and the way I play guitar and the way I choose my sounds and the, kind of sonic landscape that, uh, I want to be unique to me, and that I want to be
Mhm.
identifiable. But I don't think I've ever felt like I've had to kind of, you know, curtail any aspects or dull it down. Like I'm lucky because I'm kind of shooting for that.
Yeah.
So, um, but it's there are a lot of other pressures. I feel there there's
Such as
there's
like
enough
what?
stuff to. Well, I mean, the one thing I love, it's like, I think the people who really, really do music, you don't do it because you want to, you do it because you don't have a choice. Like,
Yeah.
it's a lot easier to keep it as a hobby and get a much, much more stable, better paying job somewhere
Hmm.
else and then play
Sure.
guitar after hours. And that's amazing. Like if you're happy doing that, I think it's a really wonderful thing and a lot less stressful. I just didn't have that choice. Like I had to do it. Every single fiber of my being is like, you have to do this. And even the idea of not makes me sick, where it's like, okay, I also don't want to live in a tiny little apartment like I do now for the rest of my life. And it's something that every day you're like, well, shit, like, there are always those moments of, yeah, I hope this works. Like, and it
Hmm.
will, I hope. It's it's
Yeah.
it's one of those things I think that every artist feels. I mean, I know my dad felt it for a long time, even after they were successful. It's like, is this real? Like, could it be taken away? Is it real? Like,
Oh
and
yeah,
I
that kind
I
of,
think that's something.
when's it over? When's it over?
Exactly, and that's, I think, something people forget too, is a lot of times people, and I've heard it before, and this is also why I've worked so hard to get, to a level at what I do, or, if people try and knock it, it's like, great, come in a room with me and I'll do better than you at whatever you want me to do better at you. And like, it's,
Yeah.
a lot of people will say, oh, it's like, you're Paul Stanley's kid. Like, you can easily make it. You have everything, this and that. It's like, actually not true. Like I'm very lucky where like obviously there are a ton of benefits of that. And I have a great family and they've been super supportive. I've grown up, in a wonderful place and everything. But like, I mean, for starters, it's like, dude, I worked at a deli all through high school. I worked retail when I moved back here. Literally, I was sleeping 1 or 2 hours a night, working retail all day, going to the studio after and repeating. Like, my dad's got money, I don't. Like, like,
Yeah.
but I think it's a great thing too because like that's what pushes you to get good. That gives you a sense of urgency. Like doing that, I don't want to fucking steam shirts my whole life. Like,
Yeah.
like sitting there was like, that's what pushes you to go, all right, not only do I want to write the best song possible, I have to because I can't do this forever. Like, I think it's a really, really good motivating factor. But then also, like, you get this idea, a lot of people sometimes think that because of what my dad's done or who he is, my music should be a certain way or sound a certain way.
Hmm.
And I love what my dad's done. Actually, I didn't like listen to Kiss until I was like probably like 16, 17. Like I'd heard them a million times, but it didn't even register. It was just like, oh, it's dad's work. Like,
Yeah.
and then finally I was like, you know what? Like, obviously a lot of people like this. Like let me like try and
Check it out.
listen to a record as a listener. And I'd put it on in the car and listen the same way I'd listen to anything else driving around. And it was Kiss Alive. And it was like, shit, this is really cool. Like okay, I get this. Like, this is really, really cool. And it was the first time I could kind of separate myself a little bit. And that was like one weird experience, but also eye opening. But it's something that, I'm so proud of him and I love the stuff. Some more than others, like anything, but it's not what I want to do. And it's not
Right.
me. Like I'm not a rock guy. And that's the funny thing is like, I play guitar and I love it. And I'm a great guitar player. And I became a great guitar player pretty quick because it's all I did.
Right.
So I thought, oh, like I'll start a band. Let me find another guitar player, a bass player, a drummer, and we'll play songs. And like, but that kind of manifests itself a little more rock leaning, and we're playing a lot. And we're on tour. I'm like, why am I not happy? Like, what's going on? We're starting to get people to come out more consistently. Then we're starting to actually not a lot, but make a little bit of money for shows where it's like, it's great. Like, why am I not happy? And it's like, I'm not really playing the music I want to play. And it's a weird feeling to, go, like on paper, I should be stoked. Like,
Yeah. I should, this is the path I should be working. Yeah.
exactly. But I wasn't. So like we got off tour and I just was like, I'm going to write the best songs I can, exactly the way I hear them, not worrying about like how we're going to play them live, not worrying about what the other guys are going to think. I'm just going to do me. And
Hmm.
I did. And I got these 2 songs out of it. And I was like, shit, this is really cool. And I called a friend of mine who's a great producer. I was like, hey, like, do you want to check these out and help me kind of demo them out the way I'm hearing? Cause like, I don't really hear it like a rock band. So we did, and she did a great job and we produced them together. And like, especially one of them, called Later in Los Angeles. I was living in New York at the time. It's called Later in Los Angeles. And it's like, okay, this is really good. Like I knew like this I have something. And that was the first time where like, there was always a bit of hesitation in what I was doing before where I liked it and like I was having a blast, but like there was always I think when something's right or not. And there was always just a tiny bit of me that was like, you're not there yet. It's not it yet.
Yeah.
Like you gotta just keep going. But then when I listened back to this, I was like, all right, like if this isn't it, this is the path to it.
Yeah.
And so that it's funny that actually ended up being the song that kind of got me working with some of the guys I do now and kind of opened a lot of doors when I moved back to LA. And will be coming out at some point the next few months. I don't know what
whenever
where in the order,
yeah,
where in the
things
order
are.
is, but like I showed the guys in the band, and I remember, and this is no knock on them. I get it's probably a shock where I wrote everything for the band, but it was different where I'd come in with a guitar and play it for them, or like send them an iPhone note, like shitty recording of me and a guitar in my room, and then we'd kind of arrange it together and suss it out. But this was very different where I had them over and I played it, and it was like a done production. It was It was done. And it sounded really good. And it was like, what is this? And not in a good, like, what is this? Like,
Yeah.
what? Like, not a good what. And
It's funny. Like I'm relating so much with what you're saying because when we started Inebri-art, it was just like didn't even have a name. It was just a get together.
mm-hmm.
And then when we were like, hey, is there a business idea behind here? It was all about like everyone was doing those paint nights at a bar and
Yeah.
like 30 not judging or trying to pigeonhole anybody. There were women, 30 women would all show up to paint and you'd walk them step by step through painting. And we were doing okay at that, but it's like the whole time, like, this isn't what I want to do. And the second we stopped trying to make it a business and started trying to promote artists and events, it became a business. Like
Mm-hmm.
when we were trying to like steer it into a business, we were having
Mm-hmm.
trouble. When we kind of like stepped back and just we're like, hey, everyone's our two rules are everyone has to be welcome
Mm-hmm.
and it has to be fun. Because at the time
That's amazing.
we had day jobs and like without it being fun, why bother doing it? And
Totally.
so because of that, and because we kind of adopted the policy of if you come to us with an idea, we're only going to say yes and just go from there.
Nice.
And it just like it blew up in ways we never expected. And it sounds, similar like when you were trying to force it into rock. You were like, I'm on the right track, but this isn't right. And then when you kind of were like,
right.
oh, I'm just going to relax and be me.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly it. And I mean, I had a blast with the guys. I'm still tight with all of them. I mean, I was texting literally last night. Like, they're great dudes and great players, and they're doing really cool stuff now too. It just wasn't right. But that's a scary thing to be like, all right, I just got out of school. Like, I'm not old, but I'm getting older, and I'm in this band.
All right.
Like,
first of all, slow down.
But like, you got to understand, like, this is like a no shit moment where it's like, I started this band. We really were grinding it out for like a year. Doesn't sound long, or 2 years, but like when that's all you're doing every waking hour, it's a long fucking time. And like,
yeah.
And then it was like, shit, well, like, it's just not right. So I quit and I moved to LA. And this writer, Andreas Carlson, I've kind of known forever through my dad, like peripherally. He's a big Swedish pop writer and an amazing writer and great dude. And I would kind of text him. He was one of those dudes where I'm like, I should definitely stay in touch with Andreas. Like, this guy's like the real deal writer. And I would kind of send him songs when I was first starting. And there was one called Anticipation that I sent him. And it was the first one where he was like, hey, this is like really good. Like, this is really good. You should keep going. This is really, really good. And that came right after. So the two kind of probably most important moments for me songwriting wise was one of the most devastating nights of my life at that point, and then one of the best.
It could be the same thing.
Yeah, they were separate nights, and they were like opposite sides of the same coin, and so helpful because like talk about like being true to yourself and being honest and not being difficult for being difficult's sake. I've known Desmond Child for a long time, who's another like just like pop writing god I've known through my dad. Hilarious character, ridiculous talent, does not sugarcoat shit. And in fact, he likes to twist the knife. So it's like, forget sugarcoating. It's like he gets enjoyment out of really, really magnifying what's there, whether it's good or bad. Like, if it's good, he will flip, but if it's not, And I sent him this song, and he got on Skype with me, and we're talking it through, and he loved the title. He's like, great title. And it was a sick title, but nothing else was sick. Like, but the thing is, like, and he really tore it apart. But the best thing is, every single thing he ripped into, there was a reason and a purpose for. And every single thing, it hurt like a motherfucker, but I got something out of it. Like, he pointed out, I mean, the first thing he goes, what does this line mean lyrically? And not in a like, because I don't get it, it's wrong sort of way. He just goes, what does it mean? And I said, well, like, I'm listening to like a lot of Joni Mitchell, and it could kind of be this, and it's a little, and he goes, no. What does it actually mean? Like, what does this specific line mean? And I didn't have an answer. And
Which
you
is
know,
always the wrong answer.
and that's the wrong answer. It's like,
Yeah.
I realize in hindsight, like I could have said anything if it was confident. Like maybe he would have been like, hey, it doesn't quite come across. You might want to rethink it a little if you're really trying to get that across. But if I had confidently had an answer, I think it would have gone a lot differently. I didn't, because it didn't mean anything. That line didn't
Hmm.
mean shit. And like, he really went, and I so appreciate it. Like he gave me, I don't know if it was an hour or more discussing this 2-minute song. Like, and this dude churns out hits in an hour. So it's like,
Right.
he's giving me
Yeah.
real
Yeah.
time. Like, and he's really going at it. And at the time, I remember that Skype ending just being like, all right, it's over. I guess I'm just going to be, because I just started writing. Like, I'm just going to be the guitar player forever. Like, I can't write songs. I can't do it. This is the worst thing ever. And then after about 2 or 3 days of sulking, it's like, all right, like I'm already too far down the rabbit hole. There's no way I'm not doing this. So let's figure out what I can take away from that. And that's when I kind of started looking at it objectively and realizing, wow, like every single thing he tore into, he did with purpose. And every single thing, he didn't just say, this isn't good or this is bad for because it's shitty. Like every single thing he didn't like, he told me exactly why he didn't like. And he gave me kind of the map of how to fix it. And
Everybody needs that friend, man. Like I have a friend of mine, Adam Miller. Every once in a
mhm,
while, I'll send him a piece that I'm working on and be like, "What do you think?"
mhm.
And he doesn't sugarcoat it. And by the end of the conversation, I'm usually like, "I need a hug."
Yeah, exactly. It's like
Yeah,
I was shell shocked. Like it was
but it's
because
purposeful. He's not he's not shitting on you. He's like, this
no,
needs just being straight.
exactly. And up until that point, like I'd always, my dad's the same way. And thankfully, like when I first started playing guitar, I'd always ask him, what can I do better? Because like, it's nice to hear you're doing great, but like if that's all you hear, you're never going to be the best. Like,
Right.
I always want to hear that. So I was used to that when it came to guitar or anything, in that, or like playing with a band, getting it tight or whatever. Like, but I never really shown someone a song and had it ripped apart. So that was a
Mhm.
new thing where it's like, my baby, I was so precious with it. And it was
Hey,
horrible.
my
Like, it was
baby,
really,
even I hate it now.
yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah.
like, like I felt like I was about to throw up for like days. And then finally it was like, okay, like I got to just cut the shit and figure this out. And I did. And it was the most helpful thing anyone's ever told me. This, he really ripped it apart, but he did it so like artfully. It was great.
Yeah.
And so then I wrote a couple more, and one of the ones I wrote a few months later was the song Anticipation. I sent it to Andreas, and he was like, this is good. He's like, this is really good. Like, you can really write. So it
Mhm.
was like, okay, I have this one amazing pop writer totally tearing this stuff apart, but he also gave me a lot of his time. He didn't do that for no reason. Like, there has to be something to it. And he showed me exactly how to fix it. So I did. And then I had this another amazing pop writer going, hey, this is really good. Like, you should keep going.
Mhm.
And so occasionally I would send Andreas songs, and he was awesome. Like, he'd really, same thing. Like, he'd give me feedback, and like, he kind of gave me his approach to like, this is how I approach lyrics if I get stuck, or like, this is where I'll start. And it was super helpful. So I kind of always knew like he vibed with the stuff, and he was about it. So I was in LA after tour, actually when I had kind of wrote those songs that I told you about, and I had lunch with him, and I was kind of just explaining to him like, I'm like bummed and I don't know why. And he's like, well, dude, just like quit the band and move to LA and we'll do stuff. I was like, okay. So I did. And um, that was a few month process of being in New York, going out of my mind, like trying to figure out what to do. But I did. I came around and I did it. And I was scared shitless because it was like hitting the reset button. No band, no job. I got back to LA and like quickly started working retail, just like to get out of the house and like
Mhm.
get, you know, at least kind of on my feet life wise. And then Andreas introduced me to his friend Christian, who's I didn't know at the time, but he's produced and written a ton of huge pop stuff. And at that point, I just went over that night to his place. Andreas is like, he lives kind of far out. He's like in the hills between like Agora and Malibu. It's like this is a drive from LA,
Yeah.
keep in
Okay.
mind. And he's like, but it's worth it. Just like trust me, like you want to go out there. So we went out there.
In East Coast
And
terms, that's probably like Massachusetts to Connecticut.
yeah, exactly. Like this is not close. And But I mean, it's not too bad. It's probably like, it was like 45 minutes or an hour
Oh,
from
okay,
where
so
I was. Like, but like it felt long. It
yeah.
feels far. And I get there, and Andreas is like, play Kirsten that song Later in Los Angeles. And I played it, and he like really, really responded to that. He's like, the arrangement's all wrong, but the song is great. And I was like, what? He's like, what? The bridge is the chorus. The verses are amazing pre's, and we got to rewrite verses. And I was just like, I don't hear it, but I trust him. Like, he's like
Right.
this amazing. And he responded so quickly, so positively, but also so sure. He's like, this is so obvious. And he opened Logic and like quickly started cutting stuff. And he's like, go sing some new verse idea melodies. And within the night, we basically had what is now the song Los Angeles. The bridge became the chorus, the verses became the pre's, and then we really quickly rewrote new verses. And that was the first song we did. And then Christian's like, this is really cool, man. We should do another. Come back. And I came back and we did another. And he's like, yeah, dude, this is cool. Why don't you come back? And then pretty soon he's like, here's a key. Like, you use the studio whenever you want. Come through. And with that, it was just like every day after work. And thank God, like, he's a total night owl. This dude he sleeps the weirdest hours, but it worked great because I would go to work and then come and work with him.
Yeah.
And he was the absolute best in terms of also really, really being about me finding my shit. He's like, don't do stuff to chase trends or anything. He's like, he's like, go in the room, lock the door, and like, just do you. Just like, figure out what you love the best, figure out what you sound the best on, just do the most you. And like, he would push me. Sometimes he'd come in and like, just say the weirdest shit just to get me to respond in a certain way. And like, he pulled so much stuff out of me that I didn't know was there, and showed me so much that I didn't even know was an option. And, I learned so much he's the one who got me into production, him and Andreas. And, I kind of just watched him make stuff, and that's how I learned. But, that was really that moment of like, kind of what you're saying of like, step back for a minute. Don't think about how this is going to fit in to anything. Just, what are you the best at? What do you love? What excites you and what gets you going? And, I did that for a year. Like, I did, with nothing to show anybody. Everyone I was close with, my parents included, knew like, you're gone a lot and you're doing stuff a lot. Like, what the fuck are you working on? Like, so I wouldn't show anybody things. But it paid off. And now it's, now I'm comfortable and confident that like, for the first time ever, like, I'm happy to put down anything, of mine on anyone's desk to listen to with no disclaimers, nothing else. And it's like, that's me. And like, you might not like it. It might not be your taste, but it's fucking sick. And
Yeah.
like, and I'm so stoked to be able to say that, where like, and you got to build, but like, now I'm so stoked. Today, actually, my first real single just dropped in the video this morning,
Nice.
called El Camino. So anyone out there, check that out on any of your DSPs or YouTube or anywhere you can find music. You'll find it.
All the
Check it
music
out.
he plays.
El Camino.
Yeah.
And but everything from here on out, I'll be putting something out at least every 6 weeks, probably less. And
Let me ask you
more, I guess, more frequently. But
let me ask you real quick, because that's an interesting way of saying it, because I feel like in your dad's day, you drop an album a year, maybe every 2 years. Do you feel it's different now, where you have to kind of space the songs out? Like,
if you're not putting out, especially as starting out, if you're not putting out a song every I was gonna say 4 to 8, but probably more like 4 to 6 weeks. If you're not putting out a single every 4 to 6 weeks, like, you're already setting yourself way behind. Like, you got to just be churning out so much stuff. I think and I mean, I haven't made it yet, so what do I know? But I'm from everything that I've seen, and as a consumer, if you're not putting out a shit ton of stuff, you're shooting yourself in the foot. Like, you got to just be constant. But that excites me now, because now I work every single day, and I'm so stoked to, obviously not always, but for the most part, each song that gets finished, because like if I usually, I'll start an idea, I go pretty hard at it for a day or two, I put it down, and then I listen a couple days later. And it's like, if it's good, I'll finish it. And if not, it'd be like that. But like, everyone that gets finished is better than the last. And every song from here on out, like El Camino forward, I test that shit in the car next to my favorite stuff. So like I have a playlist of all the stuff that I love that's working right now, and I
Yeah.
drop my stuff just in the middle of it and drive around. And if it doesn't get me stoked and doesn't sound at least as good as everything on there, then I did something wrong, and I go back to the drawing board. So like it's the best feeling in the world, and it happened for the first time this year, is like, I put a song of mine just in a playlist randomly, and it popped up, and it's like, shit, if I heard this and it wasn't me, I'd be jealous. Like, if this came on and I didn't know what it was, I'd go, fuck, like, I wish I thought of that. I wish I did that.
Yeah.
But I did. Like, that's the best feeling ever. And I've never had that before, and that's come after, I can't tell you how many sleepless nights just working through stuff and just trying stuff and going, wow, that's horrible. I shouldn't do that. And like,
Yeah.
or holy shit, like that is so me and it feels so right. And I do it so effortlessly. That's the ticket. It's like, I've kind of gone down just a path of like, I guess self-discovery, if you want to get all hippy-dippy about it.
No, but I
like,
mean,
you lock the doors, turn the lights out, and see what comes out.
I feel like that's any true creative person. That's the goal. And you never actually discover who you are because you're constantly changing. So it's like, you're always trying to be like,
Totally.
well, what does this mean now? And like, well, or you go back and you look at something or listening to something from like 5-6 years ago, and you're like, oh, what was that about?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's this weird, like, I hear like a lot of perfectionism in you, where you're like, oh, I could do better. I should be doing better. So like, where do you, I totally get it. Cause anytime I do anything and it gets hung anywhere or sold or whatever, anytime I see it, I go, well, that sucks right there. And that's not right. And like, so when do you find that point to put it down? Like when are you like, this is done?
It's never done. And I like, you can hear it too. Yeah. Like, it's like, it just gets to a point where it's like, I think I've learned to accept, like, and because even the stuff I'm talking about where it's like,
is it I'm done of working on this?
It's different for everyone, but I think it just gets to a point where it's like, I've learned that there's always going to be stuff that I think I can fix or I think I can do better. But truthfully, before a song comes out, I'll spend at least, like with El Camino, I spent at least 2 full days going in circles, going, this one little sound could be better, and trying stuff for hours going, no, like maybe it can be, but I really don't know how to make it better. I've tried everything I could possibly be hearing. This line needs a harmony. I've sung it 1,000 ways. I've tried 100 different harmonies. I thought it in theory, and maybe I felt it a little when it wasn't there, but it's worse off when it is there. So I just try and poke as many holes as I can in the kind of I want category, or it should be, by luckily it's, I guess with a painting or drawing, it's like, you can't really try everything the same way, because it's like, if you,
we can't go and, well, I don't know. Digital art now is so
that's
similar to music, where it's like, oh, I can just hit the undo button 12 times and go, but I'm not a digital art person. True. So it's
like, I cannot imagine what it's like working without an undo. I would go out of my mind. Like, I'm really lucky where I can say like, this needs another guitar part. And then I try like 30 guitar parts. You go, I was wrong. Delete. Like, like, I think the way I stay sane is really that. It's just, you put in the hours of like, I'm going to just try shit until I've just run the tank empty of stuff to try. And like, I might still feel when I hear it that it needs this or it needs this, but I can safely say like, I tried, man. Like I tried. We're like, it doesn't change the way I feel, but I tried. And like, it's still, like I said, it's the car test. Like, if it gets me really stoked next to all the stuff I love, and if I react to it after not hearing it for like a week and put it in that list. And if I really react, then it's like, all right, I did something right. So like, yes, there's always going to be shit that drives me crazy, but I try and accept it and move on to the next. Cause you're right. I mean, I think we're similar in that way of like, there's always stuff you wish you could change,
Yeah.
but I just go, okay, I'm going to make the next one better.
I'm always about the deadline.
Mm-hmm.
So if you ask me to do something or paint something or whatever, and you're like, oh, just whenever, I go, cool, it's not going to be done ever. Like you
100%.
won't get it. It's just not going to happen. But if you give me a deadline, I may go past the deadline if I don't think it's done. But generally
Mhm.
speaking, that gives me that point where at that deadline, I can go, I'm happy enough that this is going to go out or,
Yeah.
whatever. So without a deadline, it never even gets started. I don't know.
No, because it's not as pressing. It's
Yeah.
like it's my it's I don't know about you, but I'm curious actually, like because my biggest source of inspiration, like yes, there are definitely those moments. Like I mean, when we're living our lives and actually doing shit, it's different. It happens a lot more often, but especially since being locked in with this virus, it's like the amount of times I'm just
Oh,
like
you guys have that too?
divinely it's like what virus, man? That kind of like divine inspiration where it's like, oh my god, I have this emotion, I have to put this into song, and like you wake up from a dream and it's done. Like that happens, but like a lot less so now that we're not doing anything. So like my biggest inspiration is like I love what I do and I need to keep going, so I just do it every single day. And then you have a label partner or PR or someone going, hey, so we need the video by the 16th. And it's like, well, shit, it's the 6th. Like, I guess we got to figure
Yeah.
it out. Like, I'm the same way, where it's like, hey, so the first two singles we got queued up and it's great. What's number 3? And then I'm looking through the list and it's like, I have a lot of great stuff, but none of them feel right for number 3. Guess it's back to the studio. And it's like,
Yeah.
that's the
20 days
inspiration.
to
It's like,
do it. Yeah.
exactly. But I
Yeah.
love that. Like, I think stress can be a very positive thing.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I think when we started this podcast, it was every 2 weeks. And
Mm-hmm.
then it became a weekly podcast. And part of that is what keeps me going, is just that idea of like,
Totally.
well, I need an episode. And we've
Yeah.
cranked episodes out in 3 days. Not
Mm-hmm.
ideal. We're much better now. But it's that driving force. The calendar
Oh
pushes
yeah.
you forward. This year, and it's so funny. We've talked to so many people. It's affected everyone so differently. Like painting and drawing, I have done almost nothing this year. I just
Yeah.
haven't had the motivation. The only time I've done anything has been in a collaborative thing. And one was so great. I got to work on a collaborative piece with my daughter.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
oh, so
That's
great.
cool.
It was so much fun. It was beautiful. I was like summertime, we were painting outside. And so that like really energized me. I'm like, oh, cool, I'm back. And then like immediately had no interest in doing it again. Now I'm working with another friend on a triptych canvas piece, and it's the collaborative thing. It's the other person going, hey, when are we
Mm-hmm.
getting together to do this? And
100%.
yeah, so that's been huge. But
Oh, I'm the same way through this. I've been basically quarantine locked in with my buddy Max, who's been my best friend since we were 12,
mhm.
and is another great guitar player, producer, writer, and Christian, who is kind of my mentor now, partner, and all this stuff. We've just been us three kind of locked in together, working, and exactly the same thing. It's like I wake up feeling absolute shit a lot of days, but then I get a text from Max or Christian who's like, "Yo, when are you coming through?" It's like, well, I guess now.
Yeah. And we've had hosts of other shows be like, oh man, is everyone there already? I don't know if I'm gonna make it. And we're like, get here, we're recording.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And then they show up and it's a great episode or whatever. And it's weird. You have to be unbelievably self-motivated, but you do need that kind of network of people that are going to hold you to it and push you when you don't want to.
Absolutely. And I think especially now, like, I think it's such a weird time that like whatever anyone is feeling, like valid, man.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
yeah,
There's no,
like, and it's like, hey, maybe you're absolutely stoked that you don't have to go out and you're just inside working. That's great. Or maybe it's the absolute worst thing ever. And that's also equally, I guess, not great, but understandable. Like And then there's like, for me, it goes back and forth, like I'll wake up one day and for no reason walk outside and go, damn, today is sick. It's going to be awesome. I'm going to
Yeah.
write the best shit. It's going to be dope. And then I go meet up with my dudes and we do it. And then the next day, with the exact same starting place, I wake up, it's the same weather. I go outside, there's nothing more or less on my plate. And I go, wow, today is one of the worst days that I have ever experienced. Nothing good will come of it. Fuck you, sun that's shining. You're too warm. Then a breeze comes and it's too cold. And it's like,
You can come
everything's
here.
wrong.
It's literally snowing right now.
But you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's like, but then you'd wake up one day and it's, oh my God, the snow is so beautiful and it's nice and crisp and it keeps me up. And then the next day it's like, go away, snow, I hate you. Like, it has nothing to do with what's going on. It's just that inner of being locked in. Like, dude, I would kill to be able to roll back from the studio at like 3 or 4 in the morning and stop at one of my all night places and just have like a tuna melt. Like just like a shitty sandwich, but like not worry about masks,
Not have to be like closed in partitions and
exactly. It's like, oh, I touched the chair. Better sanitize. Like, I cannot wait for that to be done. Just the idea of sitting down and having a snack would be like, oh,
yeah. I interviewed Charlie Houston last week, and she was talking about how she's heard talk of and kind of feels like that post-COVID there'll be a renaissance where all these creative people have been locked away and are going to be like, I have a crazy idea, or like festivals everywhere. And do you think that's
I don't know when it'll, for sure. I don't know when it'll be. And that's the thing that worries me is like, I'm looking back historically and, there was, I forget my buddy Max, who I work with, both of us are like, we read everything we can. And like, both of us have always loved history. And that was like my jam and only subject in school I liked. And he was reading up on it. And I guess there was a coronavirus outbreak in the 1800s in China that a very similar kind of thing. It was a lot more deadly actually than the one we have now, but a coronavirus that jumped. And it took about 20 years to attenuate into the common cold. Granted, this was the 1800s and a very different landscape. And disclaimer here, like, this is my secondhand knowledge. I've not read up on this particular one, but that scares me. It's like, shit, 20 years. Like, even the idea of 2 more years of this is like killing me. But I'm hoping it's very, 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 very close because we're starting to kind of get this vaccine moving and starting to kind of figure it all out. But dude, I think it's going to be nutso after this is over. Cause look at the 20s. It was the roaring 20s for a reason. You have World War I, then you have the Spanish flu pandemic, which was way worse than this. And then everyone said, all right, fuck it. Let's party for 10 years. Like,
I'll be down with that until I'm 56.
Like, I'm stoked. I think a lot. It's a really, really, really horrible time, and I have a lot of people who I'm close with who have lost loved ones. I have lost. Thankfully, nobody's super close, but definitely acquaintances and some friends have had close calls. Like, it's not good by any means, and it's a really rough time, I think, for everyone. But I think at the end of this, hopefully, some good will come out of it. Hopefully, it unites people in a way. I mean, everyone is so polarized now with whether it's politics or anything else. Hopefully this brings people together in some weird way.
They're polarized over pineapple on pizza. I mean,
dude, it's the weirdest time. It's the weirdest time. And also that's an easy one to settle. Pineapple on pizza is super rank. If we're talking classic pizza, if it's like real proper New York pizza, you don't want pineapple on it. But if it's the cheesy bread with sauce, a lot of people call pizza, you put whatever you want on it and it's bomb. Like, yes, I live in LA, and when I get the cheesy marinara soaked bread that people call pizza here, of course I'll put pineapple on it because it has nothing to do with real pizza and it's just a weird confection, but it's awesome. Like, I'll mix everything. Give me onions and chorizo and basil. Throw some pineapple on there, peppers, jalapenos, fuck it. Just like whatever you got. But if it's like dollar slice, dollar slice is a very specific thing. That's cheese and sauce and pizza. There's no pineapple on that.
Says a New
It's
York
very
kid.
easy to settle. There's no need to get worked up. There's a time and place for both. They're just different things.
Nice. So when your PR person reached out to me and I kind of did a little research on you, I was like, all right, I don't want to ask him the questions that everyone is going to ask him, because that's what we try. I want to talk about what you want to talk about, but I'm going to ask because I'm a
You ask me
friggin'
anything.
a huge fan, and this isn't directly about you, so I didn't really want to go there, but
Let's go.
how did you get Bryan Cranston for a fucking video?
Dude, okay, so that was wild. Brian, I've known kind of forever. My mom has been tight with him for like I don't know, 40 years or something,
Yeah.
35 years. Like they go way back. Like I was watching home videotapes with my papa in Texas over the holidays, and it's my uncle's wedding in like 1986 or something. And the camera guy flips the camera around and waves, and it's Brian. Like it's like they go way back.
Oh, that's funny.
And yeah, it's super weird and but super cool. And he's, I became a huge Malcolm in the Middle fan when I was in middle school. I loved that show.
Yeah.
And then that's when my mom's like, "Oh, like I'm friends with Brian." It's like, "What?" Because then it was, he was.
Yeah.
This is before Breaking Bad or anything. I just thought he was awesome. And when I lived in New York, he actually came to a few shows when I was in the band, and super sweet guy. I mean, in addition to being one of the most iconic and just ridiculously talented actors
he's amazing
of our time.
Yeah.
Oh, he's next level. And it's, he's not just Breaking Bad. He's so amazing in that role, but everything he does with such artistry and such care. He really is just a wonderful and ridiculously talented dude. But on top of that, he is also just the coolest dude. Hilarious.
Yeah.
And we're not like, I'm not crazy tight with him, but every experience I've had with him, he is so supportive. He came out to a couple shows in New York, was so sweet, hilarious, just a down to earth, great dude. Like he's just such an awesome dude.
Yeah.
And
I've seen interviews, and I saw him on Hot Ones, and it's just like every bit of him just seems like he's the kind of guy that you're like, oh my God, like he just seems the nicest human being. And
oh yeah, like he is just, I've been lucky where I've gotten to meet a lot of heroes too, musically mostly, but like, you start to realize everyone's just a person, and people can be amazing, and some people are just assholes.
Very true.
Brian is definitely in the absolutely amazing category. I can't say enough about him as a dude, and he really helped me out with this one. So I've been working with some partners, and they really wanted me to do a cover, and it was one of those things where like I knew I could sing the shit out of Memories. I chose it because I'm like, I can absolutely crush this vocally, and it's a cool song. Like I really like the song. I knew I could kill it, but I'm like, okay, there are people on YouTube, there are dudes who like their whole thing is covers, and they absolutely crush it. Like that's their passion, that is their art, and they're so great at it. And it's like, I love playing other people's songs that I love, but like that's not me. And it's like, how do I, it comes down to like what we're talking about, like what can I do that someone else can't do? Where, someone can make an amazing cover video, and if that's your passion, you're always going to beat the guy who's doing it really well, but not with the same amount of passion.
Right.
So I didn't want to do like, I was going to say B rate, let's say A- rate. I didn't want to do an A- level. I'd still make it great, but like, I didn't want to do something that I wasn't passionate about, because it just never works out to the full extent. So it's like, okay, how can I make this interesting? For starters, it's not going to be a normal cover video. I wanted to have some sort of weird plot. I want something to happen.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, Memories, let's somehow tie it in with, something larger, looking back on something, or, and I'm like stumped, right? I'm like, I don't know what to do. And then I was on this drive, and I've never, driven as much as I have. Let's not count tour, but like, personally, I was always too young on tour, so I couldn't drive the van. So
Yeah.
I was just sitting chilling. But I've never driven proper as much as since quarantine started, because like you want to get out. My girlfriend and I have gone on a bunch of like mini road trips, and I remember we're out kind of driving in the desert, and I've never run out of gas in my life. I'm so on top of shit, and I start seeing the gas going like uncomfortably low, and 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 there, at first it's like, oh, I got a quarter tank, but I'm looking around like there is not shit around me. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, like something will come soon. Then it's starting to go under a corner. It's like, yeah, nothing's come yet. So it's just getting spookier and spookier, and it ended up being fine. But I kind of got this idea for this video. I got this wild idea of like, wait a second, like let's jump off that. Like that would be horrible. Imagine running out of gas out here. I'm like, but so I was talking to my mom, and I'm like explaining, I'm like, we really need a video. I had this great idea. Do you think Brian would do it? And she's like, I don't know, ask him. So I emailed him, and I emailed him the song. I kind of filled him in on what I was doing musically, showed him a couple other things. It was like, I don't want to put you out. I
Yeah.
so understand. Like, I totally get it, but I got to ask. I got to ask. And he was like, yeah, sounds great. I'd love to help. And it was like, oh my God, what? And so he was down. So then it came to like, okay, figuring out where we're going to shoot this, because we can't drive out to where I was before. That was so far out, and like we're figuring it all out, and like we made it happen. But he was so cool about it. Like he was like, dude, the song sounds great, I'd love to help. And it was that email was just like, oh my God.
It's funny. It's like so many. We've gotten to do so many weird things because of the podcast. People are like, how'd you do that? I'm like, I just asked.
Exactly. That's,
Yeah.
I think the craziest thing too is like, and I think it shows like when I don't ask a lot, it's very rare I ask people to do stuff, because I don't want to be the guy who always asks for shit.
Yeah.
But I'm also not afraid to ask when I need to ask.
Mhm.
And, I think you never know till you ask. So I asked, and he was down, and it was amazing. Like it's the coolest thing to like have some crazy idea and go, man, wouldn't it be cool if I could do this kind of video? And then like a little while later, you're like, shit, I am doing this crazy video. Like, and dude, you have no idea. So that Chevy was not mine. I was going to say, obviously, I guess not obviously if you don't know me, but definitely not mine.
Yeah.
It was this
Well, if you're talking about
1970
working retail and delis, I mean,
like, well, I drive an old Ford, not old enough to be cool, but old
Yep.
enough that it's costing me way too much in maintenance right now. But it was a 1975 Chevy Blazer. So I pick it up, and they're like, engine has been all checked out. The belts are brand new. We're good. I'm like, great. So I'm driving out, and I'm driving on the highway, and I knew it was going to be a really hot day. It was already, and it's open air, and the AC doesn't work very well. So I'm like, I already know it's very hot. And as I get closer and closer to the desert, it gets hotter and hotter. So finally, I'm getting there, and it's about 110 degrees out, and I'm coming over this hill, and the whole time I'm watching the engine temperature, because like,
Yeah. Sure.
I just want to be sure we're good. And the whole entire time, right in the middle, great, chugging along, totally fine. As I come over this hill, literally as I'm going downhill, when everything should be fine, I get a weird sound and a weird smell, and I look, and all of a sudden, because this is an old truck,
Yeah.
this is like a real proper gauge, not some digital readout. The gauge goes past the red. This thing is as far slammed as it can possibly be. I'm like, this is really not good. And then smoke starts coming out. So it's 110 degrees out. I'm supposed to be on set at like 1 o'clock. And this is like 12:30. I planned everything out to get there like 15 minutes before, because we couldn't get in to film before 1 o'clock. We weren't permitted. And I'm very punctual. I'm good with that shit when I need to be. But I also didn't want to sit in 110, 115 degree weather in an open air 1975 Chevy for any longer than I had to. So
1975 is not a bad year, Evan.
It's not a bad year. It's a bad year for AC and cars, I'll tell you that.
I'll give you that.
So I pull off the side of the road. I'm supposed to be there in 20 minutes. I'm 30 minutes away. And a couple of the guys I was on the shoot with luckily saw me and pulled over. a belt snapped in the engine, these brand new belts. It's like, shit. One of them's like, all right, you guys go ahead. I'll stay and get a tow truck. So we go to set, we start setting up, and we get a call when we're about 5 minutes out from being there. And he goes, yeah, so the tow truck overheated and broke down.
Oh, shut up. That's crazy.
He's like, I had to call another tow truck. So he gets a second tow truck. He brings it. At this point, we only have from 1 to 7 to shoot this whole thing.
Yeah.
It's already like 2 something. The truck gets there. We unload. We're in the truck, and it starts. I didn't even know this was possible. Dry striking lightning all around us. I guess when it's humid enough, if the temperature, humidity, and all the shit has to be right, but you can get like aggressive striking lightning with no rain.
Yeah.
So we're sitting on this flat open area in a big hunk of lead with striking lightning all around us. And I'm really not vibing with that. It's just like, this is not good. So then after a minute, we're like, okay, we got to stop. And we're trying to fly a drone. Like, we're like, okay, we have to stop. Then it starts pouring rain, like torrential. Keep in mind, it's still 110 degrees out. Right as it stops, Brian pulls up. And then a sandstorm starts. And I don't mean a little bit of dust. I mean, you literally cannot open your eyes outside. So we're all sitting in cars, just like twiddling our thumbs. And we had to shoot the whole thing in like the last hour. But we made it work.
And I think that's one of those things where you go. It's part of being kind of like a creative person. Like, you have plans, they never go according to plan, and it's all a matter of like what you can do with what you actually have. And it's that we made it work somehow. You look back and you're like, I don't know how that happened, but yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's so gratifying to see the video and I'll be like, all right, not only is it done, it's sick, but there's definitely a moment where I'm like, are we gonna have a video?
Is this a huge waste of money? Yeah. That's awesome. Man, this was so great. I appreciate you talking to us. Where can people go online?
I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of went over time, but it was such a good time. I didn't want to stop.
It was such a good conversation. I love talking to you. It's like anytime we get to talk about art with another artist, I'm in. So you can find me.
Where can they go?
My main social is Instagram at It's Evan Stanley. That's I'm always on it. You can reach me there. Tell me what you think. And I'm on Twitter, Instagram, all of them. Every social platform at It's Evan Stanley. Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer, Tidal, Amazon, whatever you use. I'm everywhere. If you find me, type in Evan Stanley on any DSP or at It's Evan Stanley on any social.
Nice, man. And like I said, thank you so much for talking to us. Wish you the best of luck. You're welcome anytime to come on. Just let us know. We'll have you on. And
thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
No, anytime. And to our listeners, thank you for listening, and we'll catch you guys again next week. Thanks for listening to today's podcast. You can find us on all social medias at Inebri-art or on Instagram at Inebri-art6. You can email us at Inebri-art@yahoo.com. And make sure you listen to the other podcasts on the Inebri-art Podcast Network, including Bar Talk, Old Colony Cast, Retro Redoctopus, America's Hometown Horror Podcast, and our newest one, Theme Park Legends, a podcast about working at theme parks. What else? And we'll catch you again next time.